Yo people, welcome back to another Cobra Kai What If video, and I'm going to be trying to make these like at least once a week if possible. If you have any other what ifs that you'd like to see on the channel, feel free to comment them down below in the comments, and as I've done before, I will credit the person that makes the comment in the video. I'd also appreciate if you could leave a like on the video, sub to the channel, and let's get on with this video. So what if Hawk joined Eagle Fang instead of Miyagi-Do in season 4. Now, for me, I always found it strange that Hawk didn't join Johnny and Miguel for that All Valley in season 4, but when you really think about it, it was ultimately for plot purposes because Miyagi-Do needed a strong enough male character to represent them to win the All Valley male division in order to set up the tension for Tori versus Sam. But I think this still could have happened with Hawk joining Eagle Fang. Hawk not joining Eagle Fang was very unlike him because he's a character that has shown immense loyalty to whichever side he's on. Even when he's been a villain, he's shown immense loyalty towards them. The fact that he joined Miyagi-Do because Dimitri was the one telling him to come back to karate when he had quit originally was again something that felt like plot purposes. It just had to happen because it just had to happen. We all know realistically Miguel would have been on the lookout for Hawk, trying to convince him just as much as Dimitri, because Miguel always had that leadership quality that we ended up seeing at the Sekai Taikai in season 6, and he was always on the lookout for other people, making sure everyone else was good. And people will say Hawk joined Miyagi-Do to be with his best friend, but ultimately the catalysts for him even quitting Cobra Kai in the first place were Johnny and Miguel. So it feels weird storyline wise that they help him to get out of Cobra Kai and then they abandon him and never check in on him when he quits karate. So as always, I'm going to create my own path of the show and then I'll try to connect it to the actual show itself. So let's start with season 4 because there's nothing really that changes in season 3 because Hawk sides with the good guys, but they aren't divided into dojos or anything by the end of season 3. Season 4 itself doesn't really change much up until I want to say like halfway. Whenever Hawk gets his hair shaved off by the Cobra Kais, that's when the decisions start to happen, because that's when Johnny and Daniel have their split because Daniel gets upset as usual because apparently Johnny's having a bad influence on Sam and all of that stuff. But notice how when Johnny says Eagle Fangs follow me, Miguel leaves, all of them leave, including Hawk, but then he just quits karate after leaving Miyagi-Do and siding with Johnny. It feels kind of awkward, and what I would have done is have Johnny leave with Miguel with the Eagle Fangs, have Hawk kind of in the middle looking at Daniel, looking back at Johnny and Miguel as they leave, and then he leaves just by himself, not associated to anyone, to really show that he's actually quitting. But as we saw in season 4, obviously, the thing that makes Hawk decide to join Miyagi-Do is the fact that Dimitri keeps pestering him when he says he quits karate. Miguel and Johnny, because of the plot, never actually convinced Hawk to return to karate because they're too busy trying to find the female fighter, which, as I explained earlier, is just the plot being inconsistent to the characters. So because Dimitri is telling him to come back to karate, to Miyagi-Do, that's why the script just says, yep, have that be the reason why it happens. In my version, if we want Hawk to be an Eagle Fang, we'd need Miguel to be on this situation. Obviously, Miguel is also the reason why Johnny is even allowed to be at the school to get all those scenes where Johnny and Miguel are scouting for the female fighters. So maybe during the scenes where Miguel and Johnny are at the school, Miguel notices that he hasn't seen Hawk around and he goes to speak to him. He starts persuading him to come back to karate. We can even have a nice moment between these two, which we don't actually get up until maybe season 6. But since season 2, up until this point, we haven't had a nice moment between both of them. We had the standoff in season 3, but nothing actually from when Hawk comes back to the light between these two guys. So this would have been a nice moment to have between them, where Miguel himself, he's like, yo, I literally ended up paralyzed. I'm making a comeback to karate, and what, you're just going to let some pussies end your karate career? What's going on here? You're not going to let those pussies cut your hair and get away with it, are you? And that usual type of Cobra Kai Johnny way of speaking to each other, which motivates people. I think this would get through to Hawk. This would be a far more natural way of having Hawk return to karate in general. I'd even have Johnny be the one to tell Hawk that his current hairstyle is cool, since Johnny was the one that told him, oh, flip the script, get a mohawk, all of that stuff. He was the reason Hawk changed his whole image. So this would be a nice storytelling, a nice full circle moment of how when Hawk looks the most generic, Johnny still reps him, Johnny still thinks he's cool. And these are the small storytelling elements that I think are more valuable than, oh yeah, let's just make Dimitri be the reason because they're best friends. However, don't get it twisted. I'd still have Dimitri go at different times to when Miguel goes to visit Hawk to persuade Hawk to return to karate as well, which obviously leaves Hawk with decisions. Does he join Miyagi-Do? A new dojo for him. a new teacher that might not like him, along with other students that might not like him because of all the shit that he's done in the past against Miyagi-Do? Or does he side with the sensei that made him who he is, with one of his close friends, Miguel? Do they run it back as that OG trio, Johnny, Hawk, Miguel? Does he finally try to step out of Miguel's shadow and prove to himself why he's a main event character, why he's more than just a hairstyle? Add that edgy aggression he has in terms of what he learned from Cobra Kai, but in a more relaxed and composed way, thanks to the early lessons in season 4 that he got from Miyagi-Do. This would obviously result in Hawk joining Eagle Fang, and we get the main team of Johnny, Miguel, Hawk and Devon heading into the All Valley in season 4. We can even have a moment where Miyagi-Do looks at them making their entrance and Dimitri is annoyed at Hawk for joining Eagle Fang. He obviously didn't know that Miguel was also talking to Hawk at the same time, so he just feels betrayed, he feels thrown off for the tournament. As we know, Miguel is also thrown off mentally because of the whole drunk Johnny incident, so it would help Hawk to really clutch up. Dimitri, he's not feeling it mentally. Miguel, he's not feeling it mentally. So he's the one that steps up to the plate and wins it like we saw in season 4. In order for that to happen, I'd still have everything be exactly the same as the show, except maybe I'd boost Eagle Fang's points so that heading into the semi-finals, all 3 dojos have a legit chance of winning. We'd obviously have Hawk versus Miguel in an all Eagle Fang semi-final and Dimitri versus Robbie, so that all 3 dojos are still involved in the male division. We can have everything play out the same. We get Robbie versus Hawk in the final. The scenario would be weird because if Hawk wins, it doesn't do anything for Eagle Fang because their female competitor is already eliminated and not in the final, but it would help to stop Cobra Kai through a different dojo. It doesn't have to be through Miyagi-Do like the story was forcing us to believe. So with Hawk winning, he stops Cobra Kai for that very fight at least, which is the exact same that happens in the story, by the way. He stops Cobra Kai from winning at that moment and then they lose ultimately in the end. But you still get that same outcome of Hawk winning for himself and stopping Cobra Kai at that moment, which ultimately sets up that grand finale of Sam versus Tori, winner takes it all. Everything would play out exactly the same in season 4. Hawk wins the male division, Tori wins the female division through cheating, all of that stuff. And then heading into season 5, obviously the heroes lost, but ultimately they all come together, they reunite because of the Sekai Taikai. And the way that they all join together is the same way that I'd have it be here. There wasn't really a definitive moment they all agreed to it, they just all joined forces because they had to. This would naturally cause Dimitri to get over feeling betrayed by Hawk because it still stopped Cobra Kai at that point of the tournament from winning, while allowing Hawk to reach his full potential of actually having success in an All Valley in the tournament and not having to hide behind that whole Hawk persona. Then everything else would still happen the same, where Hawk gets nerfed unfortunately by the silver bullet in season 5 and all of that stuff. But yeah, ultimately it's a far more organic and meaningful win for Hawk in season 4. His return to karate makes much more sense despite Eagle Fang just being a short plot. I think with this move alone, it would have been something that makes that dojo feel less gimmicky and more important because you have Miguel, Hawk, Devon, Johnny, a lot of serious candidates. But yeah, as always, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know any other what ifs you'd want to hear going forwards. I'd appreciate if you could leave a like on the video, sub to the channel, and thank you for your time.